Hello, and welcome to the stream. My name is Bob Hess, and this is the Joy of Deving with Bob Hess. The idea that we have for this stream and what we're trying to do, trying to give players a real glimpse into our development process. One of the things that started with, we did a large presentation at PAX East this last year, and what we wanted to do is give people a really, really good chance to take a look into what our pre-production process is like. What's a pitch meeting like when we go to decide what we want to make for what we want to make for a dungeon, or how we choose what to make for a dungeon, how we go about that. And so we took some time and we decided that that would be a great idea. Well, this video and sort of this series of streams is the next step of that. It's the next evolution of that idea. And what we actually wanted to do is show you using our specific tools, our in-house tools, and showcase and show some of how we go about building one of our dungeons. Now, a few things about this stream. This stream is going to be about content generation. It's going to be about content. It's going to be about content building. It's going to be about essentially setting ourselves up so that we're not going to be doing a lot of work on like why doesn't this system do this thing, or why doesn't this specific enhancement like help me in this way. That's not what this is about. This is really, really going into a deep dive about the specific systems and how we build content. So with that kind of put aside, one of the other things I want to mention is this is one of my first streams. I haven't streamed a lot. I'm streaming from home. I'm getting used to this. There'll probably be some mistakes. I'll do the best that I can. If there's anything I need to know or need to do, please let me know. And so we'll do our best from here. The other thing that I wanted to let you folks know is that our tool set is 100% based on is a mostly internal tool set. It's developed by engineers and content developers and systems designers, all working together over the course of many, many years. The turbine engine that we use is based way back on Ashwin's Call and has been forked and brought forward for use of both the games from Standing Stone through WB Games. A lot of what you'll see is the results and efforts of hard work for our tools developers and also a whole bunch of designers along the way. But that being said, it's not a commercially available tool set. There are times that you will see things which may not be the prettiest or things of that stuff, but otherwise, yeah, it's. I kind of want to let people know so that when they see a build shell, which is literally just a terminal screen, that's one of the things that we use. And some of the things may not be quite as pretty as they could be, but this toolset is one of my favorite toolsets I've worked with. I've worked on 5 different MMOs, 6 MMOs, and I get the opportunity to do this. And I'm lucky enough to be a content designer on Dungeons and Dragons Online, a game that I love, that I play, and I'm super excited. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition over to a little bit about what today's stream is about. What we're going to do is I'm going to kind of give you an overview so you have an idea of what we're going to be working on and kind of go from there. So let me go over to there. So first thing I'm going to do is, because this references the PAX presentation, some of you folks maybe weren't aware or weren't there, I'm going to kind of give a brief overview of sort of what the setup for it is and sort of our idea of what we wanted to do. The next thing is going to be a tools and files overview. The tools and file overview is going to be a little dry, but essentially when I'm using terms or when I'm talking about things that I'm going to be doing, this is just to give you a frame of reference. Going forward, I might do stuff where there is where essentially there are chat commands and things of that stuff, and we'll do our kind of our best to highlight this stuff just so that you have an understanding when I talk about different file types. That's what we're doing. And then The third part is when we're actually getting into generation, when we're actually doing something in our tool set and building an NPC. One of the ideas that we're going to do for this is, since we're going to be making a piece of content, we're going to be making the catastrophe dungeon. We're going to actually make the primary first NPC that you interact with, and we're going to dress it up. And then I'm going to show you an in client, and I'm going to try to show you nuts and bolts of all of those different pieces. A lot of it's going to be in text editor, some of it's going to be our in-house tools. And if timing allows, I will also stub our quest so that you can see what our quest stubbing tool looks like for when we're working on DDO. One last note, our tool sets are forked for the two games. How I make a DDO dungeon and how I make a stub a quest in DDO is completely different than how I've done. You do it in Lotro, they have completely different things that they need. And so they're separate enough that those tool sets are really, really far apart. Okay, with that, I'm going to kind of start diving into the PAX presentation. Also, thank you so much for joining me. I know that this is kind of a, hopefully this is sort of interesting. Hope folks really dig this. I really appreciate all the support that we've gotten so far, and I'll try to answer questions as I go. It's one of the things that I have to get a little better at, seeing that I haven't been doing a ton of streaming and stuff like that. All right. Yes, the idea is that we'll put up the VOD for this, and we're hoping to put this up to the YouTube so that people can take a look at it in the future. So this was the PAX presentation. This was how game devs build Dungeons Live. We did this at PAX East. I was really lucky to get a chance to work on it, and let's see. On that panel, we had a whole bunch of people. Amongst those people were myself, Brent Walton, and Sonia. We were the three designers who were the people going over our pitches. Amanda Groh served as a moderator, and Jerry Snook hosted and helped us with a lot of the facilitating about it. We kind of went into a little bit of information about each of the different pieces, and then kind of stepped through a little bit of our pre-production development process. One of the cool things about this process was that we had a vote. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to vote on the theme of the dungeon and one of the major like NPCs or characters involved in the dungeon, and this is the vote. Vote was very close. It very quickly and very closely could have been a number of other things, but we ended up with Deal with the Dragon, and it had to feature cards. And then, so as a portion of that, we came up with three different pitches. And the three different pitches were Wandering Catastrophe, that was my pitch. Cats Out of the Bag, which was Brent Walton's pitch. Awesome pitch, great stuff. And The Mirror Mishap, which was Sonia's pitch. And all of those folks did a really, really good job with the pitch process. One of the fun things that we did as a portion of the audience participation is that we essentially needed a main villain or a main conflict person. And so we had people vote for it in the actual thing. So, and the three choices were Beholder, Manticore, or Mimic. And due to audience participation, my favorite, Mimic, happened to win. So what we have is we have a dungeon themed around a deal with dragons. It had to have something having to do with cats, and the bad guy, according to this vote, was a Mimic. So we went through and we went through and had different aspects of our pitches and sort of through different curveballs and stuff like that. We kind of talked through what our pitch would be. And then we had a vote. As a portion of the vote, as a note, we were thinking about doing this this specific. Our idea was to do this stream as a portion of it if everything had worked out well. I was going to be making whichever of the three dungeons that this was going to be. So it could have been it could have been mine, Wandering Catastrophe, it could have been Cats Out of the Bag, or The Mirror Mishap. However, I got real lucky. I got lucky because I made mine one. I really appreciate everybody's support for voting for mine. I was super psyched. The other folks had some real cool stuff. Time will not allow us to make those dungeons in this time frame. And so we're going to be making Wandering Catastrophe. The basic story premise is that a cat falls into a ritual circle, which was being where there was a ritual being done by a whole bunch of agents of Arganessen, a whole bunch of dragons, and what ended up happening was uh, we ended up uh, so this cat lands and it messes up the entire ritual and gets magically transformed and polymorphed into a dragon and then flies off. The agents of Arganessen don't really want to kind of point out that there is a problem that they were to blame with, and you get brought into the space and essentially asked to sort of deal with the problem. Um, One of the ideas that I pitched essentially was that you would go to a couple different places, find things that a cat in the shape of a dragon might want, like a giant ball of yarn or some other stuff, and essentially and maybe a big saucer of milk or things of that stuff, and you could kind of bring him to a place where he could be magically. Um, when you actually do all of those things, the idea is that the mimic reveals himself as a villain. The mimic is a person who, at some point, essentially had gone up against the agent, the Arganessen, the dragons, and as a punishment, they had turned him into a mimic. And that mimic held a grudge to this day. Essentially, orchestrated this whole thing in an attempt to turn public perception against the agent of Arganessen, and it's a little unsure. One of the things that we're going to discuss at another time is whether or not we want to defeat that bad guy or if that should be an ongoing villain. I think that the ongoing stuff is kind of neat, but I'm sort of excited to see where it's going to go story wise, and that's going to be a part of the conversation as a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing today is going to be sort of pre-production and preparatory file work that I do as a start of my process, and as a portion of that, it really goes into these are some of the steps that happened. I'm going to go back real quick. This one of the other things that I'm going to mention is um, there was some pre-production work done before the stream. A lot of those had to do with the lead time that we need to do for things like art requests. Art requests take long in our pipeline, and so for a while, uh, uh, as a portion of it, it's essentially any art requests or any animation requests. I had a few that I requested, and essentially, I need to make sure that those are going to go on because they will take longer than the ish months that I'm going to be working on this. I think the current plan is to set this through in mid-December or early December, and the idea is that probably in the next 2 and 2.5 months, I'm going to have this all put together, and hopefully every other week we'll see how it goes. If people like the stream, we'll be showing at least some usage and sort of the next step that I'm going to be doing while we're doing it. One of the things that I'm excited to show is a lot of our world building stuff. I'm also excited to sort of show what we do to prep for internal playdays and kind of maybe give you a little bit of a glimpse of that stuff. The idea is that this is going to be a standalone quest. This will be a free-to-play quest, I believe. I'll double check on that. I could be talking in beyond myself on that particular one, but I believe it's going to be a free-to-play quest because it kind of connects back to the PAX East, and so it's sort of nice. We don't have a level range set. It's going to be one of the things that we're going to talk about, and we'll have that as a portion of maybe one of the conversations that we have later on. So next we're going to talk about the tools. The tools are, there, tools. I want to talk a little bit about our tool set. The first thing I want to mention is that we use the Turbine engine. This is an engine that's been used here at SSG. It was previously used at Turbine, then it became WV Games, and now we use it at SSG. There's some slight changes depending on what particular project you're working on, and some of the underpinning is a little bit different from Lotro and PDO. A bunch of the tools are different, but there's some commonality between some of them. But in some cases, there's some things that one game can do and the other one can't. If you're familiar with both games, that sort of happens. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the world editor, and it's world builder, and it's a part of the Turbine engine. This will do everything from showing people, uh, essentially showing people uh, the visual versions of what files look like with art hooked up and things of that stuff. And it shows that. It also shows sort of what a completed dungeon looks like or what dungeons are, and it's what we build the actual dungeon shells in. And also, it's what we do scripting in for certain NPCs. Scripting is a proprietary scripting language that we do internally. Um, and so it is one of the workhorses of the tools that we use. Our source management software is Perforce. We've used Perforce for years and years and years. There have literally been white papers written about the depositories that we use for the number of files that we have, because we have very expensive games that have been ongoing development. We've been using Perforce successfully for a very, very long. Text editor is personal preference. I use Notepad++. Makes things real pretty. And a lot of our data is held in spreadsheets. We use Excel. We have a whole bunch of custom macros built for Excel. A lot of our data kind of pipes through Excel and goes from there. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about files. So these are some of the basic file types that I'm going to talk about and that I'm going to reference as we're kind of going through. These file types are a .wc file. It's a basic file type. A lot of times it's used as a reference. A lot of times it's just a sort of a bare bones text document. However, there can be some information put into it which gets brought out through other stuff, but a lot of times it's a reference for some of our other types of things to use. When I bring it into World Builder, what that type of file could be, it could be anything from a monster to an NPC to a dungeon or a dungeon quest. All the information about a dungeon quest. It could be information of that sort. .cdb. .cdb is what we use in Excel as our data management. A lot of our stuff is saved in CDBs, and essentially it allows us to track a large amount of data and also save a lot of data and make it quickly editable. So we use that as our file format. The next thing I'm going to talk about is an entity. A .entity is essentially a basic type of file that has visual display information. It could be anything from character appearances and all sorts of stuff. Also, all the a lot of stuff gets hooked up to an entity so that you can see it in game space. Some of this discussion is going to make some of our engineers a little shaky, but it's sort of just to give you a little bit of an overview on it. But it's sort of the idea. .lbo. LBOs and LBIs are our landscape files. Those are what we use when we actually make dungeon spaces, and that's the way that all of that data is aligned. LBOs, entities, and .wcs are all text editor editable, along with .stts. .stts are our string table files. Sometimes when we make an oopsie, you'll see a bad STT like error code. Essentially, there was a reference that didn't go the way that we wanted to, but essentially a lot of our written information is put out to a file called .stt file so that we can edit it, go back. Lastly, but not least, is a .wcgen file. Essentially, any WC, after it goes through our processing stuff, this is a much more detailed amount of information about all of the different things that a .wc uses. I'll show you a little bit more about it, and it'll make a little more sense as we go. Let me just take a quick look and see what we got here. Do we use storyboarding for quests to break down ideas before putting the mechanics in? A lot of times there's sort of a roundtable being like, this is what we're going to be doing. These are the ideas. These are the major bits and pieces. So storyboarding, not quite as much, but a lot more of a sort of, this is an overview. Now, individual designers, as a course of this is something that Individual designers have a lot of leeway in the specific process they can use for this. Yeah, it can be a flowchart. The way that I design a dungeon might be different than how Sonia or Brent or any of our wonderful developers do. We have some structure stuff, but a lot of it's in meetings and it's a little more free form. And it's sort of like, I have this idea, um, so that people have an idea of sort of how long it's going to take and all of that sort of stuff. Do we test each other quests? Absolutely. We spend a decent amount of time right before release going through other quests. We give feedback. My opinion as a designer, the toughest part of my job and the most important part of my job is my ability to take, interpret feedback from a variety of sources, anywhere from other designers, which I hold very dear because they've done a lot of the stuff that I've done, but also from the players. And uh, so playtesting and also going through and doing a lot of that type of work is really, really important. Um, uh, yeah. All right. So next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually dive into the tool. We're going to take a look, and I'm going to generate one of our NPCs for the for this dungeon. One of the reasons why we're generating an NPC first is because when I go to make the quest, it's going to require me to have an NPC made for it. And so I'm essentially going through the flow of what I need to do to make a dungeon. And the first thing that's going to do is going to make an NPC. All right. So I'm going to go into my build shell. All right. This is not going to look uh, visually impressive, but essentially a lot of this is done in a terminal screen. It's a script that they wrote that allows us to make a bare bones NPC pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do is going to go ahead and type NPC gen, and you'll see it move over to the next thing, and it's going to ask us what type of object we're going to create. So in this case, there's two different breakdowns. There's an NPC and an NPC monster. The idea is that this is all based on the entity that the character is using. Most of our NPCs tend to use normal player, like use an entity which is an NPC entity, but is based on the player races and things of that sort. In this case, we're going to keep on going with that because that's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and select NPC. And now what this is doing is essentially setting where in our file structures it's going to be put, and also where in our CDBs this is going to be. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm making a story quest, and I need a story quest NPC. So I'm going to go ahead and select story quest. This has all sorts of stuff. Flavor NPCs we use a lot in quests. Also, when you randomly walk up to someone who is not associated with a quest, they can be flavor NPC, transport NPCs, or people which move you from place to place. Vendors, kind of get an idea of a little bit of the different types of NPCs. One of the other things is that under the hood, each of these have different set of properties. These properties essentially tell it what it can do, what it can't, and there's a bunch of backend setup that you need to do as you go a part of it. All right, so we're going to do a story quest NPC. All right, so now we're going to choose a basic model. I've done a little bit of thinking about what I want to do for this. And the idea is that I'm going to probably have two NPCs. I'm going to have one NPC that pushes you to a location. It'll probably be House Jarasco. I'm going to double check to see what we are at, like level and all that sort of stuff. But I think that we have some neat appearances in a lot of the like geometry, and we have some stuff that we can make some pretty cool city street stuff. We did a little bit of that when we were running the Plague Pack. So the Madness, one of the Madness chains in House Jarasco, which we did a few years back. I like a lot of that sort of stuff, so I'm gonna end up doing that. So I'm gonna select a human female. And so now this is going to ask me where this NPC is found. Now, this is more for the actual file generation portion of this. This is not player facing. This is more for our own internal use. So when I nickname something, it's so that other people have an understanding of what it is, and also it sets up the file structure for all the pieces. So when I write Kitty Dragon, it's because it's a part of the Kitty Dragon quest. That's what I'm calling the name of all of the different things, because essentially it wants a unique name or a reference for all of the files, and Kitty Dragon will really stand up when I'm looking for different files going forward. This is just to help me out to begin with. All right, and then the name. Now, I'm going to put a different name than will end up in game here because has more to do with the actual file structure. Um, the file structure of this, I know I'm going to need to reference this. I know that this is going to be, um, uh, it's going to be the basis for some of this. Oh, sorry. Let me see if, sorry about that, folks. See if I can resize a little bit. Sorry about that. One sec. Sorry, it's got cut off. Let's see. Just give me a second as I fix this. Sorry that this got cut off. Seeing. All right. That should actually give you a version of it. Sorry about that. But so yeah, oh, this is a screen, so here you can see a little bit more about it. I'll have to be a little bit more careful about that going forward, but we're gonna select Kitty Dragon, and then I'm gonna hit enter. One second. There. All right. And so I put in the name Kitty Dragon, and now I need to enter the name of the monster that I was going to do. The name that I'm going to do specifically for this is going to be Arc. The reason why is it's going to be the Arc giver for the quest. And when I go back into some of the other files, you'll see that you'll see kind of how that works. Essentially, this name is more of a reference than anything else, and then I'll go back and change. All right. And I am going to transition to this because there's a little bit of data that we're not going to be showing a lot, but essentially it's a working name, and it's going to go from there. Okay, so next, I am going to bring up our Perforce screen. Now, what this did is that entire process essentially generated a series of files. Those specific files are listed here. You can, hopefully you can see them. Hopefully they're a little bit readable. If you need me to zoom in, I can do my best. But essentially, there are two different script files. Those we'll get to in the future. There's a string table file, and then there's a WC file. Now, these are the basic building blocks of this. Oh, and in another change list, there's also the quest NPC. So what I'm going to do is dive down real quick into the NPC S quest and show you a little bit of what this is about. Here. Now, as you can see, this is a very empty file. This is essentially just a reference, which could have some data in it, but it's just a blank reference. It doesn't have a lot of information about it. Doesn't have a lot of like end information about what it looks like or any of those types of things. So what I'm going to do is open it up in our next program, which will be Excel. Give me a second while here. Now, this has a number of tabs, and essentially the data that we have in this essentially has the name of the file that it's referencing, and then the name that's going to be displayed. This name here, I'm going to change. I am going to just call it placeholder because we are going to go ahead and do a text pass on this at some point. And essentially, this file has a bunch of information. Essentially, it tells you this .wc refers to this string table. All of the information that I save from here will go down there. And this is the base entity that's going to be used. The other thing that I can do is in the appearance tab, I can set some basic appearance information if I want to using this tool. A lot of times we do this in a different way. I'm going to show you how we do it in that different way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this and process this specific change. And then I'm going to show you people what that looks like. So now that I essentially changed the name and didn't change much data, I need to do the next step. That next step is process this file. This is one of our internal tools. It's called Dashboard. What it does is it essentially takes the game data that we're putting together and it reads it into our build so that we could actually create this monster or put it in any way, shape, or form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and process this. This process takes a little bit. It's kind of uninteresting, but essentially what it's doing is taking any of the data that we have in the CDBs, because essentially the placeholder WC is the reference to the CDBs so that all the information contained in the CDBs can get put together into the generated file, which is the WC gen, which will be the next thing that I show you. Let me see. Just take a couple seconds for this to come through. One of the things that we're trying to do when I'm putting this together is I'm trying to give you an idea, like a rough idea of what our day-to-day work is. There'll be some things that I will do very quickly, which will be kind of half steps and not the full production. Some of the stuff I'm going to be doing takes much, much longer, and we won't have enough time to, in these like hour to hour and a half streams, we won't actually get a chance to show the depth and breadth of all of this stuff. All right, let's take a look. I see that my dashboard has read some stuff. Let's see if there's any errors. Nope. I'm going to go ahead and process the string table one more time. Okay. So it'll take a couple of seconds for us to do this. The next thing that I'm going to do is show you what this MPC looks like in our tool. On 1 second while I draw. One moment while we go. So all of that data put together when brought into World Builder, this is World Builder. This is what it looks like. This is a base human using the basic information which was processed through that, and this is what they'll look like. This is essentially one of our generic NPCs. And what we want to do is we want to look a little bit at sort of how those NPCs are built, and also sort of setting them up so that they look a little more good for the setting that they're going to. The other thing that I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to bring over a existing character that I made earlier today. This is a character that which is a human female, or sorry, is an elf female with a gear set and appearance and a number of things set up. I used a similar appearance set for it. But the idea essentially was to show you kind of what a more done model looks like as we go through this. It's kind of neat. It's one of the fun parts that we get a chance to do. Sometimes we do a little bit of dress up stuff, and it's what we're going to be looking to. Now, the first thing that we're going to do, because we're going to be putting this character in some costuming and things of that sort, is we're going to select it, and I'm going to open up a panel. Second. One of the interesting parts of this process is that this tool essentially wasn't really built with streaming in mind. The idea is that I'm going to try to do the best that I can. Hopefully, I can show enough of the information about it. Now, if I put this up, good. I'm going to go ahead and position. Now, what you see here is one of the screens that we have, which is essentially additional information about this NPC. Uh, in this case, uh, these are all of the properties that have been assigned to this creature, and it's essentially listed down below. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste a couple of these into the top portion of it, so that we can start making edits on the appearance. It'll take me a couple seconds while I do this. Let's see appearance. Go ahead. Any chance for blue hair? Yes, we can absolutely do some blue hair. Can take some feedback on this. Close these as I copy and paste, because essentially I'm going to need all of these long term to do appearance portions of this. These are all of the appearance keys that set up and allow us to customize the appearance of an NPC or monsters or a number of other things. Let's see. Hopefully it's right. Let's see. It's not human face. As you can see, this isn't done in sort of a quick manner. This is more of a slow, progressive bit where I'm setting these. The stuff down here is what is existing on the character, so it gives me a good place to sort of edit stuff. Now, each of these have different different particular things that they're holding. This one right here, hopefully you folks can see it, is essentially the hair dye color for this character. And what this is a sliding scale and allows us to actually change the hair color of the character. As you can see, as I go through, I apologize if this is jarring. But as you can see, as I click through, I'm actually setting different hair colors as we go by. I think there was a request for blue, so we can take a look to see what we have for blue options. They might be for set. They might not even exist. I might have to set up a different hair, but let's see. Yellows. Oh, got a light blue there. So that's one of the ways that we go ahead and set the appearance of the hair. Now, this next one is the crest mesh, and what this is actually the haircut. I chose human female because it has one of the highest and sort of largest set of options for while we're going through this. And essentially, when I'm looking through, I can go ahead and essentially adjust. And every couple of, I think that there's only a handful that we can set up for this. I know that there are a couple of different crest meshes, but essentially this is one, and that's another. Uh, let's see. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use this. It looks kind of neat. Zoom out a little bit. Oh, that's right. One of my coworkers mentioned something, and it's probably something that I should do. I just have to look up where that is. Hold on a second. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to load a different hair set. This is the base ones. I'm going to go ahead and load the Ravenloft hair set because it has a bunch of different options. I will shift the color back, and as you can see, we actually kind of have a wide array of choices. All right. You can see you can get a couple of different things, but essentially we have sets of APRs, and each of them are based on the individual character and also sort of when this stuff came out and where we have flexibility for setting this up. Let's see. Got that. Kind of like that. That one's kind of fun. Haven't seen that much in game. It's a little wild, a little crazy. We can take a look to see what's left in long hair. But yeah, so essentially we've got some long hair versions. Some of these I like more than others. I think I might go back to the other APR set. Let's go back to base because I kind of actually liked the initial one of the early ones that I had, which was this one right. Um, all right. So that's a haircut for that particular character. The next thing I'm going to look at is their clothes. Now, when I open this up, you probably won't see a lot of information regarding this. Essentially, what I'm going to be doing is looking through their armor sets. And one second, let me see if pull up so for you folks. Take me a couple seconds to put this together. Okay. It here and close it when I need it. Sorry, it's just going to take a second while I put this together. Let's see, cover it and move. All right. So what I'm going to show you is essentially into our actual. These are the list of different uh, some of the different sets that we have available to the characters. And so essentially, I'm going to go ahead and take a look, see what some of these might look like. As I select them, when I click in, give me 1 second, hide those. You can see that I selected Bard. That's what it looks like. This a little bit further, see if I can get this to work. One of the challenges with this specific tool set is that essentially when I'm making these file choices, I have to set up something in OBS to work a little more quickly. Let me see if I can go ahead and get another one set up. Let's see appearances. We're doing Bard. This up. Let me see. Refresh this. Second. All right. I am to drag this over a little bit more so that you can see when I actually make a selection what happens. One of the things I was going to probably do is make this a merchant. We have a couple different preferences. I'm going to go ahead and select the, say, human female archer, or sorry, the human cloth merchant red APR. I'm going to hit OK, and that's a character. That seems to be a decent look for the character. We can look and that. And so I said an outfit for the character. This character, essentially, this is the outfit for the entirety of the mesh. So it'll be both tops and bottoms. I don't have a great deal of flexibility for changing individual pieces, but there's a whole bunch of different presets, and also there's probably a whole bunch of different options as a portion of it, depending on the specific one that I pick. But I don't know specifically in this one. I'd have to take a look. Don't know off the all right, so we have that. We have that. Let's see what else we can do. We can change, essentially using the skin tone. We can change the appearance. We want to do that. I kind of liked what we had before. It isn't particularly blinding or any of that sort of stuff, so that looks pretty cool. We do hair color. Showed you a little bit of that, and we can do face textures, and these will somewhat change the appearance of the face. I can do a bit more so that you can see that. As I select through these, it will change kind of subtly as I actually hit new for every bit. Let's see. And I see we got the old lady one. And so there's a whole bunch of different options. That one's not too bad. I'll go back to one of the earlier ones. That one looks nice enough. Yeah. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that information, and I'm going to put it into the file itself so that it saves. I could have put some of this information in a different location. These are just some of the things that we have to do as a portion of this. Let me. So essentially, what it was going through and picking all the different options. These are some of the options. One of the things that I might do, actually, I'll do that. It's kind of interesting. We have sets of gear which the NPC can use, and so doing one of the gear sets might be fun. Essentially, I'm going through and taking making choices based on that. All right. Now here, the neat thing about gear stuff is that we can do stuff like make it look like an archer. We can make it look like a Kenneth artificer. We can do all sorts of different things. Essentially, this is a lot of the is the weapons that they're holding, and also any hats or things of that sort. And these are some of the more bare bones ones that we have. we'll do a wizard, and you can see that you can have a nice little staff. There's a bunch of other portions of actually setting up a fully set up one of these NPCs, but I figured that this is a good overview of showing a little bit of the time it takes when we're trying to set up the appearances of each of these NPCs and building these NPCs. This is some of the work we do. This isn't all of the work we do. We can do things like customize what they hold in hands. We can do, and we have a lot of different options with individual pieces of this. I'm just looking for something for this. Let's see what peasant looks like. Peasant will just give them a nice staff that's a little oversized. Um, what was craftsman? Craftsman, if I was doing sort of a more worker type thing, we have a whole bunch of different options. Could you have an NPC holding any weapon in the game, like raid weapons for players to use? We can, but that takes additional time. Is essentially the way that it is. It would be doing a lot of hand work to set up an appearance. And we sometimes do it, we don't always do it. It really depends on the individual NPC and if that information, if we want to just show that information specifically. I can't think off the top of my head how I would do that or I would show you, but this gives the character, this gear stuff gives the character a little more depth, gives them a nice little belt, gives them a bracer on one hand, and kind of completes the appearance. But it is something that we could do. We've done it in the past. We can set up some of those pieces. But all right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this information. And second, while I go back to Notepad++. So what I'm doing right now is looking at the actual data for the pre-generated NPC that I had built. Essentially, this is the information that I took from that tool, and I'm actually placing it into the character itself, so it maintains that information and saves that. There's a couple of different small changes that I need to make. In this case, this is just some of the property information that I need to do, and so I'm going to do this, and tab this over one time less. So that looks right. And do I have the right closing braces? I need 2 more closing braces. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. What that is essentially just saving all of that information that I just set up here into the character itself. If I was to bring that character back into this, here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And then drag that back in. You can see that all of that information that we had just set up was lost, except I copied it all out. And when I process this file, which is what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and we will see essentially the work that came through from us setting up all of those different problems. It's going to take a second to process. So let's see. Let me check to see if there's any questions that are going on in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, I can't live without No Plus Plus. It is fantastic. It's wonderful. While this is processing, do you folks have any specific question? Do you have anything that you want to know a little bit more about what we're doing? But as you can see, I've been putting this together. It looks like it blended. So I'm gonna the file, toss I'm going to see something. I'm trying to remember if this is going to work or not. Nope. Second. For me, what's the hardest part of deving? Okay, so the toughest part of developing is probably for me it's the interpreting and the rounds of feedback. Taking the feedbacks of the things that I've built, that I've worked on, and taking that information and making it actionable and usable is honestly really challenging. Sometimes things are really straightforward, but sometimes you get feedback like this dungeon didn't work the way that we wanted it to work, or it requires a large uh, refresh or something of that sort. Um, and so that can be really challenging. 1 second. Just trying to get something up and running. All right, let's go ahead and mention this and go ahead and bring the character back in, all of that information, and hopefully I saved it correctly and it all worked. And you can see we now have the appearance that we're looking at the specific NPC. Besides appearances, what's the limit of NPC's default animations? We have a wide array of different emotes, things of that sort. What I'm going to do is let me see if I can bring up a little bit of that stuff. Second, 7. Yes. Right, let me bring that up. Okay, so what can we do? We have a series of emotes. Those emotes allow us to put basic uh, uh, sets of different things that we want the characters to do. We have some passed out. We have 3 different options for that, depending on what we're going to be doing. We have a whole bunch of sitting emotes, and you can we can walk through and see some of them as we go through. We got some arm cross, we have some idols. I can kind of page through some of them based on whether or not the character had it. Let's see. This one's drinking. This one's the character sitting on an edge. And so these are pre-built for us from our animation people. And so we have some flexibility, but we don't have like a ton in it. Like we can have people drinking at a bar, we can have someone which is, kind of happy. We could theoretically have someone juggling. Um, can I make them T-pose? I, I would have to select one that they don't have, and I think that this particular character uh, has that. Maybe. But honestly, I don't like showing off T-posing, but you can see that there's all sorts of different options that we have, and it's kind of neat. Cleaning a bar, crying, that sort of stuff. So we have a pretty wide array for when we're posing NPCs. It is something that has to be built, and a lot of times we're going to put different pieces into their hands. Now let me just see back. not be to me. Oh, no, this back up and there. All right. So yeah, that's a little bit about how we go about making a PC. Um, let's see. Yes, we do need more kobold jugglers. This is essentially a decent look at us using our specific tools. I was supposed to go for about an hour. Um, I'm gonna go a little bit longer, just to show you folks. I kind of went into the weeds a little bit into this. Um, uh, I'm gonna show you folks the basics of how we build a dungeon. Actually, I know what I'm gonna do instead. What I'm gonna do is uh, I'm going to show you when we set this up in client what it looks like. When I start my server, me actually putting this together. And then at the end of that, I think I'm going to have to save stubbing for the next stream because essentially we have about an hour for this sort of stuff. Great, we'll do that. Then the next thing is I'm going to switch the screen that we're going to be using. Here, let me try. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring up just take a second while this loads. Sorry about that view. What we're looking at right now is a dungeon. This is my test space. When I try to build stuff, when I put stuff together, this is what it looks like in or this isn't what it looks like in client, but this is what it looks like behind the scenes. This is an area that a lot of folks don't get to see. And what I'm going to do real quick is do a couple of quick things. What I'm going to do is that this is one of our objects. This is a generator. This, when a character enters into an area, this is one of the ways that we actually make objects in our game. So what I'm going to do is take the NPC that I made, toss it down. It's going to place at the location that I wanted. And go ahead and hit E, go ahead and turn the character around and place the character. It's got to snap to the ground, so we'll go. One of the great things about our editor is that essentially it allows us to quickly do a whole bunch of visual building. And so in this case, what I can do is I can bring up a panel. I'm going to have to do this next time so that you can see it. But essentially what I can do is select this object to this object. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a line. And what this tells it is that when this comes up, it's going to make this particular character in this location in this dungeon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to process the file. And so what you can see is essentially the result of all of that work in our actual game world in one of my hidden test spaces. So hopefully it's kind of interesting. Um, I was going to try to do the stubbing of a dungeon. I don't think we're going to quite get there because there's a couple more moving pieces. But hopefully you folks have found this kind of interesting. Let's see. Let me go back to this. While this is processing, if you guys want to see, I can go ahead and transition back over here, and you can see that what it's doing is currently adding it to the game data. Essentially, if I have made any horrible mistakes, it will come out over here. It will tell me. It's kind of nice. Um, and this is the processed file that I changed, and uh, and this is me adding to it. Let's see. All right, so that is now good to go. We'll go with this. I will go back to this. Show you this real quick. All I'm doing is going into our build shell, typing a command, and what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and launch the game as it's loading. Now that I've added it to file, I can access it and check it out while I'm in game. Transfer back this way so that you have something to look at. One of the nice things about this editor, while the game is loading and all of that stuff, is that this controls the actual placement for it. And if I was to open up the file, it's actually when I save the file, it will save the location information about the stuff. All right. Let's see if I actually got this. All right. So this is my private game server. This has a whole bunch of test characters in it. You may notice that there are a couple of player characters. That was for debugging. Yes, we have the opportunity and option to take a character from the live worlds and put it into our own data. The answer is, how do you get your own private server? Is you work for Standing Stone Games. You get lucky enough to get an opportunity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this character and hop into the game world. I'm going to run a couple of quick commands. These are developer commands. To be fair, we are a remote studio. However, there are some locations that we can go to or not. Let me look up some information real quick because I am not remembering it just right now. Or if I have to G test Bob. I think that's it. Is that it? Oh. Tell it T. I am forgetting something right this very second. Second. It's up. Let's see. DNG Bob test 1. Wonder if tell it. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to remember where I put my Okay, so this not being nice to me. Bob test underscore one, Hella 2. It helps when I type the right thing. And what you can see now that we've made this particular character is this is the NPC that we made. You could see that its name is displayed over its head. Its appearances are set. Uh, you could theoretically talk to it, but all the actually hookup portions of it isn't set up. But what we've done today has been we took an NPC, we built an NPC file, we made an appearance for that character, and we placed it in the game world. And so that is just a small snapshot of sort of what we're going to be doing as a course of this. We've already run a little bit over. There's some folks which have some other stuff that they have to do after this, and so I'm going to end up cutting this short. But hopefully, this small snippet and this small bit of uh, us doing this is interesting and is compelling to the players and the people which like seeing kind of live game dev building and things of that sort. There are a couple of things that I know going back into this, I'm going to have to take a look at. Uh, but overall, that's a little bit. That's how we make an NPC. That is the basic bones of how we make an NPC. How we change some of the appearance work. At some point, what I'll do is I'll kind of put a full together character and show you a bit more of that sort of stuff. But that is just a snapshot of us using our tools here. Our tools are great. I'm very happy to get an opportunity on it. I am very blessed. I am so lucky to get an opportunity to work for Stanford to build content for you fine folks, which were kind enough to show up. With that, I'm going to be stepping out, but thank you so much for checking out the joy of game deving with Bob Hess. And hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll go ahead and do the next step, which will be stubbing the quest, and then I'll do a bunch of world builder work where you can see me actually building the shell of the dungeon, and so you can take a quick look into that. You folks have yourself a lovely evening, and thank you so very much.